Hello, guys. Welcome you all. Today, we have a precious guest with us, Duncan Rouleau. Sir, thank you for accepting our invitation. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the
Yeah,
time that you're spending.
thank you. Uh, when we announced that Duncan Rouleau is going to come to ITÜOTG, everybody was amazed and fascinated. And we have opened a Google form in order to collect some questions from fans. And we got 50 questions from there, and we picked them,
Okay.
we organized them, and also we have prepared some questions for you. And we have made quite a research about you in the internet and found some podcasts that you were in. If you may, without a further ado, let's begin with our questions.
That sounds wonderful. Let's begin.
Yeah.
I also saw your wonderful ad on LinkedIn.
Um,
Yeah, it's well put together. Well put together.
yeah, thank you. And our editor, Tarık, also made some great edits on Instagram. Yeah, we prepared well.
Good.
My first question is, this was the second most asked questions among the all. What is the inspiration for characters, mythological characters, animals, and other works, except Ultraman, because Weibig and Ultraman is a well-known inspiration. And I found that you are into archaeology, and I wonder, does this affect your design decisions or give you inspiration?
Oh, definitely. Biology in general and archaeology, but also mythology, all of them kind of converge, right? I I think where inspiration, you can draw inspiration from a lot of different places, but one of the favorite stories that I've always heard is where the myth of dragons came from. Every culture has some kind of story of a dragon in them. Now, how the dragon behaves and what is its purpose in Asian cultures, they're much more benevolent, and they represent spirits in the rivers and in the sky. And then you get further west into Europe, they're fire breathing. They're these kind of ravage the countryside. But we're talking about cultures that grew up separately for, long periods of time. Where did that commonality come from? And one of the theories that I like the most is that people probably saw fossils of dinosaurs at some point, and those stories came from that experience, that shared human experience. And I really love how we get a little bit of information and then we just blow it up into some big fantastical thing, but there is always some truth somewhere in there. And a lot of the inspiration for the aliens comes from a similar idea, that there's some kind of part of the character that you're going to understand. Wrath, Diamond Head, even these are characters we have some familiarity with some aspect of it. But then how do you create a story or a myth around that? So that's always a great deal of fun. And that's even true for something like Way Big. Uh, I loved Ultraman growing up. That was he was one of my heroes. So I just wanted to also pay homage and honor to some of my childhood heroes. So those are two different places. And then what was so important and was this part of the question, was this for the characters or for the idea of Ben? Well, for the question.
We can hear it both,
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, Ben, Well, I can tell you how initially the idea first came about is the other men in Man of Action. There are four of us. We all used to work for Marvel Comics, and we also used to all work for DC Comics. I was an artist. The three of them were writers on these projects. But when we were working for Marvel, we all worked on the X-Men books. And one of the favorite pastimes, this was in the 90s, one of the favorite pastimes was coming up with new mutants, new types of characters that could live inside of that world. And an idea for a character that could trade places with himself, with alternate versions of himself from other dimensions. A Ben who grew up on an Earth where the polar caps had melted, and so he had to form gills, and so it was Amphiba Ben. That was the original idea: is that a character could trade places with other versions of themselves from other dimensions. Well, back in the 90s, that was considered way too. Out there for a young audience. Now Marvel's doing it with their multi-dimensional universes all over the place. But back then, I guess it was considered way too. So we started toying with other ideas, and one was superheroes. But there's in DC comic book world, there's a character called Dial H for Hero, which is very much, it's a guy who has a little dial that when he dials it up, he turns into a different superhero. And it was like, well, that's just too similar to Dial H for Hero. And so the idea of aliens came about. So there was an initial idea of something, but then it went through a lot of other iterations until it finally became Ben. And then the other thing is, we also really love the idea that he's a boy. He's a young boy, and even though he can get these powers, he's still a young boy. And so the idea that he was going to use these powers for whatever a young boy might use, as opposed to some kind of automatic hero. You get powers, and all of a sudden you're an automatic hero. No, that's not how it works. So we really love the idea that he was, he needed to learn how to use these things responsibly. And so what was also, that's how the cast around him, his grandfather and his cousin, came into being, is that we needed other voices. We needed other characters to kind of challenge his worldview and kind of keep him on the straight and narrow. So those were, those kind of elements become where the stories come from. So, you can have a cool idea like, oh, I get to turn into a bunch of different aliens. But if I get to turn into a bunch of different aliens, but I don't know how to use any of this, and I also might use it for bad purposes, and I've got a cousin and I've got a grandfather who are telling me some other things, and they have their own stories. So you build that stuff out, and slowly but surely, you've got a lot of different stories you can tell. Not just the same one again and again, but a lot of different types of stories. So,
yeah. While listening you, I reminded something that a quote, I think it's anonymous, which says, you can copy the work of someone, but you cannot copy the inspiration of someone. And I guess that you got your inspiration from, of course, the products, artistic products, but rather than just building something on them, you are just feeding yourself with some real life images and sensations, the way I see.
oh, absolutely. There's a quote that I really always loved is, you shouldn't follow in the footsteps of your heroes, but you should go where they were going. And I've always liked that, like where they were headed, and that's why they're my heroes. They're my story, my idols, my role models. But I don't want to be them. They are already them. You know, they've already done it, and that's wonderful. But why do I want to do what they've done? Because they've already done it. So that's super important. And that is, I think, just an important thing is to have good role models, but also know that they contributed something. And what you're really ultimately doing, hopefully, is contributing to the same thing. The people that I consider my heroes, they made my childhood and my youth, and also just you know, they enriched it. They made it feel. It gave it dimensions and purpose, and it made it exciting. And if I could do that for other people, fantastic. That's a great. I'm part of a line that way, and I like that. That feels good to me. So that's important. And then the other thing from a creative point of view, which is super important, and I think that this is true for any creative endeavor, and this is including even if you wanted to follow in the sciences. You can presume where you're going, right? You can have an idea. A lot of scientific experiments, you go, I'm going to mix A and B, and hopefully I'll get C. That's my theory. So let's mix A and B, and what do I get? You got X. You did not get C. At that moment, if you go, oh, that didn't work, that's where you should creatively go, why did I get X? That's really interesting. I had thought it was going to go someplace, but it went someplace I didn't count on. And what can I learn from that? And I think that that's the other part of being creative is you can start thinking or copying your heroes. You can follow that. But at some point, you're going to discover that you're not them. You're not going to do that. But what you can do is learn from your own mistakes. And then that's when it's on you to take the next steps. I think those are both super important things.
Yeah. And also, in Ben 10 and Generator Rex, as you mentioned, Ben is a boy, young boy, and he didn't know how to use Omnitrix when he first got it. And he has a family, a grandpa and a sister, an elder sister. And especially in the general Ben 10, I guess you broke down a barrier, which is superheroes always save the world and their loved ones never ever get hurt. They never lose.
Right.
And I guess that makes familiarize the character and makes audience create an emotional bond easily, the way I see.
Oh, I agree. What was super important for us too when we were building out the cast, and specifically for myself, for a couple of different reasons, but was that Ben had family that was part of his growing up, his experience of becoming a better person, having the wisdom of those people around him, and that he could fight with and he could, you know, differ from, but and then also learning that Grandpa had his own history. He did things too, and that Ben, being self-involved and young, part of growing up is learning that there are other people and they have feelings and needs and wants and all of that stuff. And that's very important. And a lot of, at least in the States and in Western storytelling, there's this idea of the lone hero, you know, the individual who comes in and cleans everything up. And that happens a lot in American Westerns and things like that. There's the guy who comes in and cleans everything up. And I think even in samurai shows too. That's not how things really work. They have a group of people who contribute, and it is a group of people. It is a community that help create something. Just because he physically can do some of those things, it doesn't mean that he had the wherewithal or the ability to see everything on what to do. And so it's important that he listens just as much, and that his family there, his group, not only are looking out for him, but they are also looking out for everybody else too. I think it's just to me that was very important, and we hadn't seen a lot of that in our cartoons. So that was a bit of a fight to get people who were, to move away from that model into a family kind of unit. That was something that was unique at the time,
Yeah,
at least
and
in the States.
yeah, I get it. And when I was a child, I used to watch Ben 10 like every day. But when you accepted our interview, I started to watch again some episodes, and I realized better something, with the.
Oh,
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm back. And it's a good chance to move on with the question. Yeah, when we talked about Ben 10, I guess there is an episode called Ken 10, Ben 10,000. And we saw there an adult Ben who had mastered, all the Omnitrix characters in a high degree. He could easily travel between universes and transform into a variety of aliens. And we watched Ben 10 grew up so fast, but we couldn't watch Ken 10 too much. As an audience and as a fan, I would really love to watch an adult Ben 10, in his prime time. And why do you think a production which is based on Ken 10 didn't exist or didn't make in the past?
sure. Well, there's some very boring reasons for that. Some business reasons for that, more than there are creative. With a character like Ben 10 and a universe that is as rich and there's so many different characters, it'd be fun to explore all of them, at any particular time. And well, let me just reel it back just a little bit. One of the things that happened with Ben and the different shows as he was moving along and he was getting a little older, one of the things that happened there is that there was an audience, one audience that started growing up with them. But this was up with Ben. Uh, this was super popular with Harry Potter too. Seeing Harry Potter grow up, and as he was getting older, the world became more expansive and more dangerous, and there were grayer things. And not everybody was all good or all bad, and people were a spectrum of different things. And that was a very popular thing, and it was working really well with that audience. But it was kind of felt that we were losing, maybe. Now, this is where business comes into it, that we were not allowing new audiences to discover Ben, that we were just going to stick with one audience. So that was one discussion that happened. And then there's a terrible business model, but it's true. People who are older don't buy toys, and they don't buy all of the ancillary stuff that comes with it. And part of how these shows get made, and this is Cartoon Network thinking, and was that they needed those elements as part of the reason to fund another show. So each time it has to be able to pay for itself in some ways first, and it's just always felt like for younger kids, they're the ones who will buy these kind of things. So there's a business decision behind some of those reasons. After having said all of that, you can't rule out the idea that we'll do something like that. It just right now, Cartoon Network, or even with streamers, the way people watch TV, I'm sure you guys are already experiencing it. How much actual TV do you watch? Everything you're watching is on social media and phones, and it's the formats are all changing, and the way productions are done, where they get funded and made and distributed, people are going through a big learning curve on how to be able to make that happen. So we'll see. That's all I can say about that. There's always a chance for that, and we know that there's a love for it, and we do too. We have it as well. We would love to tell some of those stories as well. So it's not a creative reason that we're not doing those stories. It's much more of a financial one. And Cartoon Network ultimately owns Ben 10. We sold it to them, so they get to make the final decisions on what shows get made and what shows don't.
Then fingers crossed one day.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
And now, yeah, and in Turkey, in my childhood, everybody had Ben 10 merch. You know, a pencil case, a bag, or a cup. And Khan, who is the person who contacted with you, has a Ben 10 cup. And the way I see the Cartoon Network's decision was successful because when I talk with my friends, they say they didn't like the new Ben 10, but
Right.
the younger generation loves it, and I guess, yeah, that's bad. But
I mean, I had a similar experience, but with different characters. I drew comic books, but as a child, I read Spider-Man and Captain America and all of those comic books that are now being made movies. And they're different. They aren't the same thing as what I grew up with. And I had to kind of go, wait a second, they didn't do that in the books, or that's not how they behave, or whatever. You know, it's whatever. But yeah, that's kind of the sad truth of growing up. Getting a little older, you got to let or include other people in the if they want to be. You got to find ways to include other people into into your
definitely.
band.
Mehmet, if you want, you can ask a question, by the way.
Yeah, as you know, we are a gaming club, and I would like to ask if the IPs you produce can be adapted to the gaming industry. I have loved the Generator X IP from Manafaction since I was a child, and I think it's underrated, at least in Turkey. As a game design student, I found Generator X very suitable for adaptation into a game during my high school years, and creating a video game was one of my dreams. Upon researching, I discovered that a video game was released during the PS3 era. So, are you satisfied with the game adaptations of your content? And do you plan to release new games in the future?
I'm also a gamer. I also love playing table RPGs too. I love playing those kind of things as well. And I think I always think a little bit in terms of games too, how you could construct it so that that you could play these characters or you could be these characters. There's always an element of that. Man of Action also works on a lot of video games. Right now, we're working on a few video games. We had our start with Legends X-Men video game, which we started. And so, was I satisfied? Just to answer those questions directly, was I satisfied with the Rex game? It was fine. It was not as great of a game as I would have loved it to be. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Is there the potential for another Rex game? The sad truth is is that Rex did well, but it didn't do on the same level as Big Hero 6 or Ben 10. Those are very well-known properties. Rex is not as well-known. I personally love Rex a great deal. That's I always thought that was a very rich world. And we are now entering a new phase where games are easily overtaking all other forms of entertainment as far as where people want to spend their time and their money and their creative life. They want to play with games. So of course, there's always the chance for it, but Rex might be a little more difficult of a sell compared to Ben. There might very well be another Ben game very soon, and there probably will be another Big Hero 6 game. As you guys probably well know, games are expensive. They take time to put together, and it's a very long, concerted effort. So for something like Rex to actually happen again, two things have to happen. One, and this is happening very quickly right now with AI and with a lot of the different types of newer technologies, the cost of making a game is going to become less. So that opens the potential for other IP, and Rex could benefit from that. The other thing is, one of our goals always with Cartoon Network and with Ben was that Ben was going to be kind of our Spider-Man. He would start a universe and that we could build out from that universe. And Rex was the second part of that iteration, is that we wanted to build up a Cartoon Network superhero universe. And if Ben still has more potential for live action shows and for new cartoons, he's still very well, they call it in the business an evergreen, which means that every once in a while there'll be a new version of him that will keep on coming up. And inside of those, we're always trying to move Rex. We've never given up on the idea of creating a larger hero universe. And Heroes United, I don't know if you remember that show. That was when Rex and Ben crossed over, and they went on an adventure. It's still the #1 rated crossover for Cartoon Network's history of all time. So there is some audience desire for it, but is it enough to make a game? Not at the moment. Not at the moment.
Yes, I get it. We have talked about the new Ben 10, but I think if I don't ask this, audience will kill me. So I would like to ask you, what do you think about the last reboots? And this was the most asked questions.
Sure. I know that the reboot is not popular with the original Ben 10 watching audience. I understand that, but it did very well with new audiences. And I don't think people really remember, but each iteration of Ben 10, except for, well, no, that's not even true. From what they call classic Ben 10 to Ultimate Alien to all of them, there was a lot of complaints with people who are like, this isn't Ben, because they like the one before that. And you find that audiences coalesce around different iterations of Ben 10, different audiences, and there is a significant audience of younger viewers who really like the reboot. I like the reboot for a lot of different reasons, because I liked going back to a younger Ben. We wanted to play up humor a little more. We wanted to try humor. I know right now the taste is for it to get more mature and more aggressive and all of those things. And I like those too. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think that means that humor and kind of a light touch is a bad thing in of itself. The way I look at all of these things is that Ben is big enough of a character, and his world is big enough of a world that we can experiment with a lot of different types of takes, including a Ben 10,000, just as well as a reboot Ben. So, and there were a couple of characters I really liked in the reboot that weren't in the originals. So, and Kevin 11 being a version that we wanted to do in the original version. We wanted him to have his own anti-trick. So,
Okay, thank you. Mehmet, you can ask.
Yeah, when we ask ourselves what the source of interest in this industry today, It comes down to curiosity that began in childhood. I think that especially in our childhood, we watched high-quality works that included your productions. However, I feel that series produced today are more childish. What is the
Hmm.
reason for this?
I'm not sure if I share that experience. I mean, look at Arcane. That's a really sophisticated show. I will say this. This is maybe what you're experiencing, and I suppose it really depends on. Well, it depends on a couple of different factors, but what has happened in the last 30 years, at least from coming out of the States, is that we finally adopted or fell in love with a lot of Japanese anime. That became a big influence, and a lot of the creators who were coming up were influenced more by that material than they were by what more traditional Western stuff that perhaps. Well, myself, I grew up on a lot of Japanese anime, but that's old Japanese anime. I'm talking Speed Racer, that kind of stuff. I love that material. You have these different times where certain things become more important to people, and one of the functions of things moving from TV, like this longer format where things are 30 minutes long, a story is 30 minutes or 20 something odd minutes of a story, to 5-minute stories, to shorter stuff, you don't have time to develop as many of the character things. You don't have time to develop the backstory as much. You have to kind of get to the point quicker. And maybe that's what you're experiencing, is that with these shorter forms, and there's a lot more animation happening than there was 20 years ago. It took a lot more effort and time and money to put that stuff out. But I do remember a time. I'm old, so I remember a time when it felt like every cartoon was exactly the same as the next. You know, I like Scooby-Doo, but every episode was exactly the same thing again and again. So I grew up watching that, but also reading comic books. And also, most importantly, I also, I pulled my inspiration from a lot of different places, all over the world, different cultures, different literature, things like that, and wanted to infuse that. So I think that we're in a pretty interesting spot where we got a lot of different types of creators out there, and let's just see how it plays out. I think that there's a lot of good stuff out there. But I also think that when we're younger, what we see for the first time, that has so much impact on us. Let's just be honest, that you fall in love with stuff and you feel it in a very different way when you're younger than when you're older, because when you're older, you're a little more discriminating about what you like and don't like. When you're younger, at first, when you're experiencing these things and people capture your imagination, that sticks with you. And that's why I also think, from a storytelling point of view, it's super important when you put out material that you realize that you are going to have an influence on people. And what kind of influence do you want to have on people? I think these are real, genuine questions you should ask yourself as a creator. I hope that answered your question. I think it was a very insightful, but I think that we have a lot more animation these days than we did before. So it stands to reason that a good percentage of it might not be any good.
Yeah. About the inspiration, it's a bit personal, but I would like to ask, did you ever face the moment which you couldn't find anything to draw or get inspired, but you have to make it on time, the product?
Yes, of course. Of course. When you're younger, and when I was an art student and things like that, I didn't want to have anything to do with business. That was just for those guys over there, not me. I never wanted to do that. But there is, and you could live your life that way, but you might have a hard time. You might, maybe a lot of people won't see it, or, you know, you're going to have another job too to pay for the, you know, your electric bills and your food, because that's just the nature of life. So what I discovered about myself, and now this might not be applied to everybody, but this was what applied to me. It was important for me to be trusted by the people who would hire me. So if somebody was hiring me and giving me money, paying me to do a job, it was important to me that I did the best job that I could. And sometimes not being creative and not feeling into it doesn't matter. What matters is that this person put their trust in me and I'm going to get it done. And you find a way. You do. You just find a way. It might not be the stuff that you love the most, but it also isn't necessarily the worst stuff. Sometimes from a creative point of view, you can spend too much time in your head. You can go, well, I could change it like this, or I could do it like that, or what if I did it this way, or that's not quite right, or whatever those kind of feelings are that are causing you to slow down. Making sure that you're hitting a deadline and somebody going, where is it? We need that, forces you to make decisions. And sometimes it was you who was getting in the way, not the decisions. You know, it was just you being unable to make a decision. So sometimes those deadlines force you to make decisions, and they turn out to be good. Sometimes they turn out to be better than the ones that you spend too much time on. So that's been my experience, at least, no doubt. But of course, I don't think anything, even things that you love doing all the time, there's still a part of it that's work, you know, of showing up and having to do it. You know, that's always the hardest part.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
And
you. Yeah, and I have a follow-up question about business. What qualifications do you think will someone get hired more easily in the field of animation?
Right. So I do think that the field itself is changing drastically from where I started to where it is now. I'll just tell you this story. This is something that happened to me. My father was a graphic artist, which means he did a lot of logos for things, and he designed things for packaging and stuff like that. And I remember, this is in the 80s, he had to go back to school to learn about this thing called Photoshop, because he did everything by hand. Everything was by hand, but all of the younger guys were learning Photoshop, and they were able to turn work around, and a lot more work around, way quicker than him. And he realized that if he was going to keep being hired, he had to learn. He had to go back to school and learn Photoshop. And I remember at that time going, okay, if this is a world that I want to work in, I'm going to have to stay abreast of the technologies and the way work is getting done. So after having said that, I am learning Unreal. I'm going right now, I'm learning Unreal Engine, and I'm going through and I'm taking classes and boom, you know, all the different types of new technologies that are coming, that are being used inside of the industry. I'm not going to be great at all of it, but what I will be is I'll be articulate. I'll be able to talk to people who are better at it than I am, but intelligently. I'll be able to ask, and from a kind of asking people to do work and get it done by a certain deadline, I will know what's a possible ask and what's an impossible ask. You know, like, I need you to get this done by tomorrow. Impossible. I need to get this done by Thursday. You can do that because I could do that. You're just going to do it better, you know, than me. So it allows me to be more fluid with talking to people who who are working with these things. So I always try and stay abreast of all of the information. But I often get asked this question, how do you break in to the industry? And how I broke in and how you guys would break in are two very different things. Now, what I tell everybody is, if I was starting right now, I'd be putting things up on the internet every day. I'd be developing stuff. I'd be putting it up there. I'd be building up an audience. I would be putting out short little things. I would be active in the communities. I'd be commenting. I would be part of that community, and I would be learning from people who I thought were doing better jobs than I, where they were going, not who they were, but where they were headed. I want to go in those same places. But that's what I would be doing. And I think once you have that community, it's a lot easier then to meet people who are making certain things happen or different projects. Right now, Man of Action, we're very well established in the traditional animation space, but in the brand new kind of social media, wild digital place, we've got to go through a whole learning curve again of stuff. So you never stop learning. Never stop learning. Always be educating yourself. And nobody should be working harder than you to make your dream come true. Nobody should be. Counting on something else other than yourself is always wonderful, and you should have a good community and friends, but you should always be expecting yourself to put in the time and the effort. Does that make sense? Sound like an old man there, but it's true. It is true, guys. It is true.
Yeah, and knowing that even Duncan Rouleau is learning Unreal Engine inspires us really well,
There's a lot more technology than there was 20 years ago to learn, and I'm not sure I'm always going to keep up on everything, but I do try to identify where I think most people are kind of moving. And Unreal is there are a lot of other programs and software that are similar, but I think that's going to become an industry standard, or it looks like it's becoming a standard. So
yeah, I get it. I totally get it. Yeah, I'm moving on with my next question. Today, young generations are watching Skibidi Toilet and Brain Rot.
yes.
And as one of the most successful cartoon creator, what do you think about these animations? Because we hate them.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm not ever going to go and say that what people find interesting is dumb. People find it interesting, and that's fine. That's great. I'm not quite sure I share all of it. I mean, I like some of this stuff because what it is it's kind of like having a little candy during the day. You're just doing your life, and then you just have something that's silly. It's out there. It has nothing to do with anything else. And it's like, oh, that's wonderful. But I wouldn't call that storytelling or art in the same way. I think of it more as a kind of like a joke, or like something that has its place, but if it becomes the sole way people share ideas and communicate, I think I'd be sad for that. I think that longer form storytelling, stuff that takes a little more time to think about and takes a little more time to develop, I hope that we don't lose that too. That stuff is easier. This stuff is just easier to do, and it has its place, but it shouldn't become the sole way of sharing ideas in a story format, in a story kind of way.
And do you feel discouraged when you see millions of people are consuming mass medium which has no quality, no meaning, no art? Does this discourage you from producing something valuable?
No, no. Matter of fact, it makes it all the more important. It makes that all the more important. We live in a time now and it has both good and it has it has useful and not useful. I'm not going to give terms good and bad. Let's just say where I think that it's helpful and then not as helpful. We're living in a time right now that everybody has a voice and they can put things up on the internet, and it can be, and there's all kinds of tools that they can use to express themselves. And I think that's a good thing. That's a useful thing. I think that's important because I grew up. There were a lot of gatekeepers. There were people that you had to prove yourself to be able to accomplish things, and it would keep a lot of voices out that deserved a place to be heard. But the useful thing of a gatekeeper or something like that is it caused you to be as the best version of yourself that you could. You had to educate yourself. You had to work on those crafts. You had to have an undeniable point of view for it to get financed. And in that process, it forced you to become better. And anything that can force you not to go easy on yourself and just do a prompt into an AI and then put it up on the internet like you created it. You really didn't. The guy who created the AI did it. You're just giving it, it's like, well, it's my prompt. So okay, whatever. You're using a lot of other people's hard work without even knowing it and putting something up there. If you really want to contribute, I think you should know that stuff too. I mean, and then it gives you purpose and it gives you a point of view. And I hope that we don't lose that. I know that that's the fear that we're losing that right now. That seems to be part of the conversation. But I remember when Photoshop first came out. You have to remember there was a big conversation there that art was being lost, that it was now turning digital and that things. But artists appeared, people who knew how to use that tool. It didn't mean that, and funny enough, the people who are really good at using Photoshop were the same people who learned all of the skills of how to do it analog first, who learned how to do it on pen and paper, because those processes, that way of thinking, that way of approaching work with some degree of commitment and with perspective, all of these technologies become those tools for those people. And so right now, AI's out there and a whole bunch of new stuff is out there and everybody's doing it, but not everybody is going to stick with it. They'll move on to the next thing. But the people who stick with it, the people who use it, the people who focus on it, they're going to create amazing work. And I look forward to that. I heard this once and I think about it a lot. When the Guggenheim Press was first made, everybody was sure that books and everybody was going to be super educated and books were going to be for everybody. But for the first 100 years of that, the number one book that was pressed was not even the Bible or any of these other things. It was this thing called the Witch's Hammer, which was about to use to go and burn witches and to accuse people of being evil. And it was 100 years of some pretty nasty behavior when that technology came out. So I mean, any technology, you have these moments where you have to learn how to live with it and deal with it. And we're in it. We're in it right now. So we're going to have a lot of garbage, but I don't think that should ever discourage you from, if you want to be an artist, it's still important to have a point of view. It's important to go around, see your live life, and then see if you can't reflect it back into your work in a meaningful way. If you do that, it doesn't matter what tools you're using.
Yeah, that's relief. by the way. Yeah, Mehmet, you can ask your question.
Yeah, my question about your company. How did manufacturing group come together? What is
Sure.
your approach to work? A collective formed by comic book creators is very intriguing. How do things operate internally?
Sure. No, that's a great one. Well, so one of the functions of when I was working in comics, it's a very collaborative environment. The writer, the artist, the inker, the colorist, the editor, all of these different disciplines. You have to learn how to collaborate. And this is true for animation too. I think one of the few art forms that is less collaboration is probably the author, the novelist, right? That's probably the least collaboration. But even them, they have writers that they have beta readers, people who read the stuff and tell them what they thought of the material, so that they have a community that helps them and reflects back to them what kind of work they're hoping to do and what kind of work they're actually doing. That's what a good community should do. Is you can have a hope or a wish of some kind of work, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it translates to everybody that way. And if you have trusted people who aren't just going to be mean or inflict their ego on your ego, but they are going to give you constructive work or constructive feedback, that's super important, because you don't always know if your work is going to be what you were hoping it would be until you get some trusted, and you can make changes. So in comic books, just to go back to that, where the four of us met, there was a lot of that going back and forth. A community of people that we would talk to, and all four of us worked on all of the X books together, and all four of us worked on the Superman books together. And inside of that, we discovered that we all really liked each other's ideas. Like none of us really think the same way, but I respect the ways that they all think very much, and I can learn from them. And I feel that they feel the same way towards my work as well. So it was a trusted group of people that we could share ideas with. And when we first started, you had egos. You had people who, wanted their idea over somebody else's idea. That's just natural. It's just human. But as we started working together and we started moving forward, it became, how can we make that idea the best idea possible? And if I was looking at something, I might be worried that this idea wasn't in there, or this notion. And all the other guys would feel that, their own perspectives, and we would try and give an idea its best chance at living out in the real world by kind of looking at it and trying to pick holes in it. Where was it going to fall apart? Where isn't? But it was always not about, is my idea better than my friend's idea? It is about, is this idea going to help the project? And we developed that over a period of time. That wasn't something that just kind of happened right away. That took work. It's like any relationship. If you're in a relationship with friends, or if you have somebody that you're in a meaningful relationship with, you learn how to work with that person. You learn how to talk to each other. So we did that. And we've known each other now for close to 25 years, 30 years. So in a lot of ways, these are some of my closest relationships, other than my wife and my children. They're probably some of my closest relationships. Doesn't mean we always get along, by the way. We do have time that we spend away from each other. And from being creatives, when it comes to our individual comic book work, we go off and we work with other people. We try and do things just the way that we want to, without having to consider any other kind of worry or concern, whether it's commercial or it's going to sell. We just want to be artists. And so we do that in our comic book work. Inside of our work in animation, it's a very collaborative field. There's a lot of people who are involved. Ben 10, at the height of it, had easily 400, maybe 500 people that were involved on it. And every single one of them, I know it sounds kind of silly, but it's true. Every single one of them made it possible for it to be a good show. All of them did. And without Dave Johnson helping on the designs of the original one, or Andy Sturmer giving us that incredible Ben 10 song, and the executives over at Cartoon Network who really supported the decision making, and Alex Soto, who was the kind of the head director of the first iteration, without their input and without their work, Ben wouldn't have been the Ben that everybody knows. They're just as absolutely important to any kind of project. So it's to value people's opinions and things like that. And so Man of Action, we learn that internally about each other, and we try to do that with any kind of group that we work with. We respect everybody who's coming into it that way. And I think it's super important. There are other people who try to command everything. Like they try to really be like, I'm in charge and you got to do whatever. I think that those individuals, well, sometimes they get some work done, but most of the time they make a lot of enemies. And we're not really about that. Now, working internally now where we are, any project, if one of us kind of came up with the initial idea, everybody else then kind of becomes their assistant. We help that person move that idea forward how best we can, whether that's showing up to meetings, doing design work. In my case, I might do some initial designs to help them get the ideas down and things like that. But that person is in charge of the project, the final decisions. And it depends on the ideas. It depends on the idea that gets up and running, who is what we call the point person on that particular job. And by allowing enough freedom for us to be individuals on our own creative work, and also allowing yourself or knowing that you have the freedom of either being an assistant or in charge at any particular time, it helps kind of us stay together as a group. We get to try a lot of different roles out, and so none of us feel like we're not being heard or too much responsibility is being put on anyone's particular shoulders. But let's just use Sonic. We just did Sonic for Netflix. That one, Sega, obviously, they get to make all the final choices on everything like that. But the initial idea and how it was all put together, I was the point person on that, but everybody else then came in and helped develop the rest of it. So I dealt with Sega, and I dealt with a lot of the the Netflix people and things like that. I was the person day to day who would be talking to all of that kind of stuff. They were the people that would help when I had problems getting an idea or something. This was my team that could help me get that stuff together. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Sure.
Yeah. My next
from a financial
question,
point of view, from a financial point of view, we share everything. We're a collective. We share everything. There isn't the only thing that kind of is our own thing is our comic book work. That's that if we write something or draw something as a comic book, that's ours. But any time that we want to use for something else, a film, animation, whatever, that falls under the umbrella of our collective.
that's super cool. Yeah, and next question is about Kevin, the character, and he was a rather complex character. And what inspired you when creating him, and what message did you aim to convey with this character? Is it like facing dark side of ourselves or something?
Yes. I mean, yes. When I was growing up, there was a very popular TV show here in the States called The $6 Million Man. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but you know, he had robotic parts and he was super strong and he was cool. Everybody wanted to be the $6 Million Man in my group when we were a certain age. But there was an episode where he came across the $7 Million Man. And he was just a little bit better. He was just a little bit older. He was just a little bit cooler. He was all of these things. And what that was it was a good indication for us that no matter how cool you are or how awesome you are, there might very well be somebody who's out there who's just a little bit, you know, better. And that's fine. But how do you deal with that? How do you deal with it? And then you just discover Kevin has elements about him that are very cool, but he also is troubled. There's a lot of once you get past this kind of, oh, he can do this and I can't kind of idea. Once you get past that, you discover the human, or if you take time, you discover the human, and you realize that they're a mixture of a whole bunch of good and bad, just like everybody. And yes, he is probably also ultimately because, and this was the other thing that was very important for us, because he didn't have that family. He didn't have that anchoring stuff. He didn't have the people around him to help kind of guide him and corral him in the same way. And so that's something that happens in Rex too. This was really important for us. Rex is an orphan, but he does have a family, so it doesn't need to be blood relations. It does need to be a community around you. And so that's what Six and Doc Holliday was a different type of family. But the idea that if, and this for Rex specifically, and Kevin is very similar in a lot of ways, actually, in a lot of ways, they're similar emotionally, their landscape inside is they have a lot of power. For Kevin, whatever he touched, he could make come out of him. For Rex, whatever information he got inside, he would make tools that would come out and they would represent what was inside. It's kind of the idea of whatever's put into you will come out, will see itself. And without that kind of guidance, without that kind of community, you might become somebody who's a little more dangerous to be with. Or if you're guided by the wrong people who are using you as opposed to looking out for the best for you. I think that's important. So those were part of the themes for both of those characters. And Kevin was the first one. So it was from a Ben point of view, this guy seems cooler, he's taller, the girls like him, all of this kind of stuff. But he's also a troubled guy. And in a lot of ways, he's just because he has those things doesn't mean that he doesn't have deficiencies in other places. So
I've never thought like that, you know. That's amazing aspect of you. And while talking about family and blood relationship, I want to talk a bit about Big Hero 6. In that project, you have worked on hard themes like grief, loss, new family, and revenge were addressed. And you know, how does making a project based on negative emotions rather than just like a Ben 10 cheerful, humorous protagonist always save the day?
Well, I mean, what's super important, and I do think that this is the big difference between, well, let me frame it this way. Kids aren't stupid. Kids experience everything else that everybody else experiences. They experience loss and grief and fear and chaos, and if they're shown all the time that everything is great, you know, and that the good guy always wins, and that, you know, everybody out there, you know, you can spot an evil person because they twist their mustache or, you know, they're whatever. I think you're doing a disservice to them. I think that there are ways of having these discussions about life and that that's the difference, I think, between just entertainment and then entertainment with purpose. And so it's, for me, those are super important themes. Those are things that everybody experiences. If you can tell them in a way that isn't shut them down or make them feel stupid, the audience, they go, I felt those things. I know those things. Those are familiar to me. And then see somebody work through those issues, find ways of learning to carry some of those burdens, with them. That's a much more valuable piece of story than telling somebody it's just like, oh, just move on, punch it, and it's all okay, those kind of things. Those are just much more important stories to tell. So to me, I think we always try to do that, always. I think Rex has got a very sad backstory. I think, to me, that's real entertainment. And real entertainment makes you see yourself in that material too. If you don't feel that connection, if you don't see a little bit of yourself in this stuff, then it's not going to have any kind of relevance to you. You need to see yourself at least, represented a little bit, and that can be emotionally. It doesn't need to be any other part, but you go, yeah, I've experienced that. I know that feeling. I think that's everything. I think that's the point. That's the point of storytelling. Or at least that's the point I like to be a part of when it comes to storytelling.
Yeah, and that reminded me, like, music, animation, games, films, I see them as a medium of telling something, a story. And I guess in today's world, there are some emotions that most of the people feel. They are really common, like achieving your potential, or fighting with life, or feeling discriminated, feeling lonely. And the way I see the artists who can capture that core essence of our collective emotion can succeed to a wide range of audience.
I agree. Going back to your skibbity toilet thing, what that is that's a distraction. That gives you a moment of distraction, and we all need those. By the way, we all need those, like, little distractions. It's fun, but when distractions get in the way of wrestling with everything that you were talking about, all of those types of feelings, if they get in the way, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're also doing an audience a disservice. There's people who will do nothing but eat candy all day long if they could, but that's not good for them. They need to consume a lot of different things if they're going to remain healthy and physical and all of those things. And it's up to us now. What used to be both good and bad used to be kind of mediated by, over here it was going to be the markets, but it's also, there's we have this thing called S&P, which is a government organization that says what is standards and practices, what can you show and what can't you show, and every culture has some version of that, right? That can be heavy-handed. You could be told something that somebody else wants you to know without you making those individual choices yourself. Sometimes they're watching out for you, but sometimes they're also trying to advance their agenda, their ideas. And so with this stuff that we have now, there's a lot less of that. There's a lot more of direct from one person's head to another person's head, which is a good thing. But we need to learn how to become responsible consumers too. We need to find the stuff that we feel is going to educate us, give us perspectives, allow us to be good students in life, as opposed to just people who want to eat candy all day long.
Yeah,
but that's up to us now. That's up to us now.
Yeah.
And I do agree with you. I do think that the people that I gravitate towards, and I do think people who have some lasting value. People that other people will talk about and projects are coming from that spirit. They're approaching in that spirit. They are attempting to relate. They are attempting to communicate.
Yeah, definitely. Then moving on with my next questions. Yeah, in one of your interviews, you said Cartoon Network affected the show, and I wonder, and they, I guess, affected like the number of superheroes Omnitrix has. And according to you, as a creator of the show, which parts do you think are robust and yeah, should remain untouched?
Well, if there was one part that Cartoon Network, if there was one part that Cartoon Network initially wanted to change, that we fought very hard for, to say, no, we just won't sell it to you if this changes. This just won't happen. Is they took some of the work that we had done, and they do these things called focus groups, where they show groups of kids and get their responses. It's, it's a business thing. I don't ascribe to them at all. But this is how they make decisions about whether they're going to move forward with projects, as they take them through these focus groups. And the focus groups, all of the kids wanted Ben to be able to have complete control over his Omnitrix, know how to use it, turn whatever heroes, not make mistakes, not screw up, not do. They wanted him to be in charge. We said no. I think it kind of feeds back to what we were just talking about. Like, if you everybody wants candy, candy's great, but you know what? Maybe not, life isn't candy. Life is a lot of other things too, and one of them is learning stuff. And it shouldn't all come easy. It shouldn't all happen. And also, there's no good stories in if he could figure everything out. It would be the same story again and again. So that was one thing that they were like, well, the focus groups and all these kids are really feeling. It's like, no, we're not going to change that. That we can't change. As far as his powers and things like that, I think the aliens was the best idea for the time. It was. And we also went with the notion that it gives him an opportunity to walk in other people's shoes, see what it feels like to be the other, to be something outside of what they're normally used to. Those things are good themes, and they're good, strong themes to tell a lot of stories with, because, just as infinite array of people are out there, so are the stories, So I think that's a benefit. That was something that Cartoon Network wanted to have. Ultimately, they did not want to have him switching with versions of himself, because they thought it was too scientifically complicated of an idea for little kids, and probably were right about that, by the way. But it allowed us, and this is that thing going way back to things not going the way that you intended, but something new opens up, and a new idea opens up. You've got to remain open to that possibility. That's where really important and good stuff happens. I also think something original happens. If you kind of think and you know where it's going to go and where it's going to wind up being, you're probably copying somebody. You're probably, without knowing it, you're probably doing something that you've seen before. It's when you don't know where you're going and you have no idea how it's going to end up that you're doing something original. And that's a very important. There's some people who get very afraid of that and pull back, and then there are other people who go, let's go into this. Let's come up with what we are. We're now in virgin territory. This is not something that any of us know. So let's see what we can find. That's cool.
Yeah, and I guess making that decision makes people grow, and it's like getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I resonate with that with myself. also, because I was, trying to go to a university, but I couldn't. And now I had to adapt my conditions, life conditions according to it. And I realized that amazing and original things came out of that.
I think that if you can keep that as one of your core ways of dealing with life as it comes at you, you can walk towards something, but you're not always going to get there. But if you can figure out and find new ways, or take those lessons in and find out how you can turn it into something that is positive for yourself, that is a gift that if you can give yourself that gift, that is a gift that will last you your whole life, because you will always run into that dynamic. And I think some people they get defeated and they start thinking that life's out to get them and all of these things, and they stop learning. And it's about always remaining being a student, always, even of yourself.
Yeah. And in this part, I wonder, every time life puts us in a situation that we don't know what to do, how to deal with it, and this improves us and makes us grow. But I wonder if it's possible to just, realize that in your life you are in your comfort zone and you are remain the same, and you are with just your free will put yourself in a dangerous situation where you don't know nothing to do and you are stressed out.
I that is one of the things that I often intentionally do. I throw myself into positions that I don't know what I'm
Wow.
doing. It's very important for me. When you don't always know that you're in a comfort zone. You don't. It's kind of like does a fish know that they're in water? You don't. You don't always understand that you are comfortable. But I think that if you aren't constantly finding ways to challenge yourself, and challenge is that's a relative term. Some people think they're challenging themselves when really all they're doing is, I don't know. They're kind of repeating something they've already done before, but they're getting into a fight with somebody or something. True challenge is when you feel a little bit of fear, when you feel a little like a discomfort and fear. And I do. I grew up in a different part of the country, and I moved to California. I didn't know anybody. I threw myself into these positions, and I had no idea if any of it was going to work for me or not. I just did it. As you get older, I suppose you take less of them from a physical point of view. You have to. I have to keep eyes out for my kids and my family and things like that. So I'm not going to do necessarily things like that. But creatively, yes, I'm always trying something I haven't done before. Always.
Yeah.
I think it's important. If you don't do that, I think that's sad. Personally, when I'm feeling comfortable, I get nervous.
Yeah, that's truly inspiring for everybody, I guess.
You have to be conscious about it as best as you can be. You're going to screw up. Everybody does. I'm not always, it's what I try to do. It's what I aspire towards. So,
yeah. Okay. Sir, I wonder how much time more you can spare us today.
I got about 10 more minutes. 10 more
10
minutes.
more minutes. Okay. I got it. Yeah. Then I'm moving on with my next question. Yeah. In one of your interviews, you said that you like superheroes who have one superpower and focus on it to solve problems, and their superpower can't easily solve especially challenges. And while creating a superhero from scratch, and how do you start and how do you shape it?
Well, I mean, if you think about a superpower as a tool, like if all of a sudden you had a hammer, or if you had a saw, or if you had a wrench or something, It's all the different problems or how you could solve the same problem that somebody who had a hammer and you have a wrench. How can you solve the same problem, but using that tool? It's always fun because then you're seeing a mind at work. You're seeing a character, and that reveals more about Ben in those particular situations than it does about the super ability. The abilities are cool, and you want them to be visual, and you want them to be fun, and you want them. But what's really, I think, when we were talking about the relatability, what's important is you're seeing Ben work this out, figure out how to use what he's got in front of him the best that he can. To me, those are where stories come from. That's where character comes from. All of those things. That's what I meant by those superpowers. When you get a character that is so powerful, like Alien X, who I personally, when they get so powerful where they can do anything, that becomes difficult storytelling. You can only tell one or two different stories with those characters. And the fact that they don't, that character can't decide how to act, that's fun. But how many times are you going to want to watch that? That same kind of thing. It depends on the other story that you're telling about indecision and how that affects the outcome of something. Then that becomes interesting. But there's only so many of those kind of stories that you can tell. And I mean, well, let's just take Superman as a good one. Why does he need a Justice League? Why does he need an Aquaman or a Flash or any of these other characters when he can go underwater? He can go fast as Flash. He can do all of these things. It becomes boring of a character because of that. What makes him interesting, and the only thing that really makes him interesting, is that he doesn't choose to take over the world and make it all the way he wants to, because that's what he could. And that's what makes that character interesting, is that he has the power to go in and tell everybody else how to do everything, but he doesn't. He tries to work with people, and that's where he becomes interesting. But you can only tell so many of those stories, even, I think. But
yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think it's any different. You take a look at something like Wild Beast or Wild Mutt. You take somebody like Wild Mutt. What was really interesting is that he doesn't see the world; he smells the world. So all of a sudden, he doesn't have eyes. It's his gills that smell everything. So it's just fun to tell a story about. I mean, you walk down the street, and just imagine if you just closed your eyes and smelled everything as you were walking down the street. What kind of world you would have just walked down was a very different world than the one that you walked down with your eyes. And isn't it fun to kind of put yourself into those positions and think about how to see the world differently and how to experience it differently? And also the stories that you're going to discover that maybe because you rely too much on your eyes, you're missing out on some really interesting things that happened on that street. Maybe ones you want to stay away from, but also maybe ones that draw you in. So it's cool that way too, with these kind of powers, is how you see the world and how you look at it. There's an old saying that to a hammer, every problem is a nail. Which means that you just go around smacking everything because that's what hammers do. But maybe not every problem is a nail. Maybe there are other ways to solve these problems. But you wouldn't know that if you didn't have a different perspective and a different power. So,
okay, thank you. And it's a bit personal, but you can answer whatever you like.
okay.
And I would like to know, how do you spend your day from morning till night? What do you do? Do you have a routine or something?
I think that's actually a really good question, especially when people are going to be working more out of their homes and not going into offices, and that a lot of stuff will be remote. I have 3 kids. They're all older now, but this is when I was, they're all university and up now. But it was very important for me because I worked at home. Most of the time it's in my head. I'm at a drawing table or I'm at a computer and I'm writing. Most of the time it's in my head. And that's to get into that place where I can do real work and there isn't necessarily the deadline. Deadlines are very helpful. They've actually helped me a great deal. They brought structure to me that I wouldn't have had without them. But I do go through some rituals. What I used to find was if I was working and I heard my kids playing or my wife hollering at them or whatever, family life over there, part of my head would get pulled over there and I would stop working and I would worry about, I'd start trying to be dad, I'd try to move over there. And conversely, maybe I didn't quite get the work done I needed to get done by the next day, or I was in something that was really, captured me creatively and I wanted to finish. And I would be spending time with my family at those moments, but my head would be over at work going, what if I did this? And I would find myself in two different, never in one place. I was always split focused. I would always be in those two places. So what rituals are very important for me, however you can do that, to say, for some people, they get in a car, they put on a suit and a tie, they put on their work mindset and they go someplace. I had to create those things for myself internally that had the same kind of meaning so that I could be, when I'm at work, I'm at work. When I'm at home, I'm at home. As best I could. And I'll tell you right now, I failed, but those were, you try your best. But rituals are super important. So yeah, I do. I make myself some breakfast. I go through all of these things. I say goodbye, and then I go into work. And while I'm at work, I do that. And when I give myself, I'm ending work at 6 o'clock, and I'm going to go in and help make dinner or whatever, I am now off work. And I go through the process of shutting off lights. I do kind of a very ritualized thing, a habitual thing for me. Because without that, I would be back in that kind of oceanic, place that sometimes you have to be just to get stuff done. But the more you can separate those things for yourself, and the more that you can give yourself goals from a work point of view, say, even I have some friends who have they do have a TikTok account and they do skits and things like that. And they weren't quite sure what they were going to do. They were getting some success. And I said, for the next year, just do this. Say to yourself, for this year, until that date, I'm going to put out something every Tuesday, every Thursday, every Saturday, and make sure that it comes out. Turn yourself into a professional for the next year. At the end of that year, decide whether or not it's still working for you. Make that decision then. Don't question it during this time. Just focus on doing what you committed yourself to doing. Those kind of techniques, if you can make yourself that kind of professional for yourself, you will accomplish more. You'll meet goals that you've set for yourself, things you wanted for yourself. I think those are essential, especially now that we live in a time where you have to be, much like what kind of material you're going to consume. Is it skippity toilet or am I going to read a long book? That's up to you. And you need to be much more present in the decisions that you make. And if you have that kind of discipline, you will be able to set goals for yourself and meet them in ways that some people are very easygoing to some other job where somebody tells them to do something. It's super easy because then they don't have to do any of that. And that's fine. I think everybody has that part of them. But if you can cultivate the other one, that you do it for yourself, you turn yourself into a boss for yourself and for your goals, well, then you've got another tool for yourself. Yeah, I think that's essential. If you want to live a creative life, that's an essential tool.
Yeah, thank you for the answer. I want to ask last two questions. When I talked to my best friend about what should I ask to the creator of Ben 10, he told me that I should ask, how is the sensation of being the creator of a series which shaped the entire childhood of a generation, you know?
Humbling. I'd have to say it's humbling. I don't think I did much thinking about that when I was younger. That wasn't, I was too frantic about making my mark, working on things that I wanted to work on. I didn't think about effect as much as I do now. But I will tell you this. Two things. One, it's super difficult for me, maybe not for other people, but it was very difficult to think of myself as an artist. You know, it's just imagine yourself going, I'm a poet, telling people that, you know, at school or something. I'm a poet, and taking it seriously. That's how it felt when I would tell people I'm an artist. Like, what? You know, and it's just it's this kind of, I don't know, it comes with a lot of baggage. It comes with a lot of like, oh, you think you're important or whatever. There's a lot of social kind of pressure on it. And so I used to think that, so I would say, oh, I work in animation, or, oh, I work in publishing, or something like that. But I wouldn't say what I am as a creative artist. It was embarrassing for me for some reason when I was younger. But once it occurred to me that all of the people who made my life a little bit richer, and I think I've already said this, once it occurred to me, and I got a chance to meet some of them and thank them for what they did for me. You know, I grew up in a small town and I didn't know anybody. And these were the things that expanded my imagination. These are the things that filled my life with, you know, wonder and all of those kind of things. And it was important. Once I realized that my work was doing that for some other people, it became very humbling. It was like, oh, wow. And I think at that point was when I realized, you know, calling yourself an artist can be kind of a selfish thing, like I'm an artist. But when you say that what you're doing is you're part of something that is hopefully you're paying forward. You're, you know, just like what my heroes did for me. If I can do that for other people, I consider that a life well lived. So yeah, that's what I am. I'm an artist. And I think I didn't realize that that's what I was doing until the scale got up a little larger. When I was in China, I was in the People's Republic of China, and some little kid was wearing a Ben 10 shirt, and I was like, "Oh, holy cow!" You know, I was like, "Wow," you know, that's we have something in common. We share something in common, and it's not I came up with that, and you like what I came up with. It was like we both think that's cool. That's awesome. And, you know, I don't know what else we have in common, probably a lot, but that was the first thing that you could kind of notice and you go, oh, wow. And that's a wonderful thing. That kind of connection is pretty great. If you can, Ben 10's big, right? You know, a lot of people know it all over the place, but we all do that in smaller ways in our life anyway. So, you know, maybe it was just I was too dull to kind of get it until it got bigger. But I see kids dress up like that for characters, Ghost Freak for Halloween or whatever, and it's just wonderful. It's great. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's my last question, and I know that you don't like to compare which one beats which one, but I gotta ask, in a fight, who would win, Diamond Head or Forearms?
Well, that's a good question, but I think that I'm going to have to give it to Diamond Head. I'm just going to have to give it to Diamond Head.
Yeah.
Diamond Head has a lot more attacks. He has long distance attacks that if Forearms ran out of things to throw, he'd be in trouble. Put them both in the vacuum of space. Diamond Head can still shoot stuff at Forearms.
Yeah, I would bet on Diamond Head also.
Sure.
Yeah, sir. it was really inspiring moments with you. You know, we appreciate that you spare your time in order to talk to us. It was really emotional for even me to, you know, talk to the man who created a show which shaped my childhood. And lastly, do you have anything to add or any suggestions maybe?
Go out and create stuff, guys. Go out there and make the world a funner, more exciting place. It's already a scary one, so let's go out there and do some stuff and do some good.
Yeah, yeah, thank you, sir. And
Yeah.
best advice you can get.
Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, today we had Mr. Duncan Rouleau with us. Stay tuned for more. Good evening, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Yeah, now I